How's it going? Tuesday, September 12th, 2023. Game started. Top five. A book I wrote. Baseball's top five pitcher list. What do I mean? Pitchers who landed in the top five in a certain category in a particular season, and who did it the most. Top five. Get all the pitchers in baseball, National and American League combined. The top five best pitchers. Game started. For a career, let's look at the career. Cy Young, 815 games started. Nolan Ryan, 773. Don Sutton, 756. Greg Maddux, 740. And Phil Niekro, 716. Those are the top five career games started. For a season, how about these guys? And they're all before 1900. National League got going 1871, 1872, right in there. So in the National League, you have five guys who have incredible numbers games started. Will Wright, 75 games, 1879. It's in the baseball reference. It's in the record book. Games started, 75. Bud Calvin, 75. Jim McCormick, 74. Guy Heckler, 73. Charlie Radburn, 73. These were all in the 1880s. Will White, 1879. Game started. But who are the pitchers who were in the top five in games started the most times? Walter Johnson, Bob Feller, and Robin Roberts, 7 times. Top five games started in a season, 7 times. Cy Young, Kid Nichols, Warren Spahn, Al Spalding, Greg Maddux, Don Drysdale, Justin Verlander, Amos Rusi, 6 times. And then the rest of these guys are 5. Bud Calvin, Tommy Bond, Will Wright, Tom Glavine, Hal Newhouser, and Bobby Matthews, 5 times. So it's a short list. 17 pitchers are leading in making the top 5 in games started for a season. Walter Johnson, 7 times. Bob Feller and Robin Roberts can lay the claim. These 3 guys having the most games started in a season, making the top 5 the most, 7 times. Interesting. Cy Young had 815 games started in his career, yet made the top 5 6 times. He had a 22-year career, right? He only makes it 6 times. Because a lot of other guys have a lot of starts, but they don't do it multiple times. Back in the 1870s, you had Jim Devlin, George Bradley, Tommy Bond, Sam Weaver, Jim Whitney, Jim McCormick, all these guys. They're starting a lot of games too. Ed Walsh, Jack Chesborough. Interesting that Pete Alexander didn't do it more than 5 times. Neither did Koufax and some of these other guys. Short list. You got to make it 5 times or more to make my book. But I list every year in this book, from 1871 to 2022, the top 5 in games started. What do you think? Like I said, in the 1870s, you had a lot of no-names that are not in the Hall of Fame. Matt Kilroy, Toad Romsey, John Clark. John Clarkson's in the Hall, so is Tim Keefe. You got Silver King, Mark Baldwin, Ken Carsey. A lot of these guys started a lot of games. Jim Scott. Then you get going in after the turn of the century, you got a lot of guys starting too. Dave Davenport, Lefty Williams, Lee Meadows. See, have you heard of these guys? Watson Clark. All these guys are starting a lot of games, but they're not doing it as multiple times. Carl Hubble is in the Hall of Fame. So is Lefty Grove. Didn't do it more than 5 times. Who are the guys? I'll repeat myself. Walter Johnson, Bob Feller, Robin Roberts, 7 times. Cy Young, Kid Nichols, Warren Spahn, Al Spalding, Greg Maddux, Don Drysdale, Justin Verlander, still pitching, Amos Rusi, 6 times. And then the rest was Pud Calvin, Tommy Bond, Will Wright, Tom Glavine, Hal Newshouser, and Bobby Matthews, 5 times. See, look at, if you go through this book, I go through every year. Ralph Branca, Johnny Sane, Bob Lemon, Todd Newcomb, all these guys are starting, but they're not doing it as much times as these other guys that I mentioned. Bob Fran, Jim Cott, Mickey Lolish, Gaylord Perry, Ferguson Jenkins. Got to make the top 5 multiple times to make my book, as far as multiple times doing it, 5 or more times. See, you got Jack Morris, didn't do it. Tom Browning, Dave Stewart. They start a lot of games. Curt Schilling, Tim Hudson. Present day players. You know, I noticed, go through this book, in the 1870s, guys are starting 50, 60, 70 games. Will Wright, Pud Calvin, Jim McCormick, Guy Heckler, and Charlie Radburn. All 70 games or more games started. So in the 1880s, 90s, 50, 60 times these guys are starting. After the turn of the century, it goes down to about 40 games. There are a couple guys got into the 45, 46 times. 1910s starts to go down again. Gets to be about low 40s and then into the 30s. Then 1920s, it's about, the average was about 38, 37 starts. 1930s, about 35 to 37 starts. 1950s, a couple guys got 40 starts. 1960s, picked up a little bit. More guys are starting 40 games, 41 games, 42 games. Wilbur Wood, 1972, excuse me. Wilbur Wood, 1972 started 49 games. 1980s goes down a little bit. There's a strike in 1981, so the most games started there was about 26. But then in 1980s, the average is about 38, 39 starts. 1990s goes down to about 36, 35 starts. 2000s, the number right now from 2000 to 2010 was about an average of 35 starts. And then the year after 2020, about 33 starts. Isn't it interesting? 1870s, they're starting 70 games, and yet they're playing a lesser schedule. Some of those guys, some of those ball teams were only playing 100 games. Excuse me. And then it gets up to about a 154 game season. But there's only about 35 to 40 to 45 starts in that 154 game season. Then they raise it to a 162 game season. Still, the pitchers are only averaging about 38, 39, 40 starts. And then the year 2022, the most was 33 starts. Interesting stat, isn't it? Game started. It's in my top 5 in this book. Next category, complete games. This will be interesting because there was a trend in the early years from the 1870s all the way to about 1950. Even the 1960s, 70s, these guys were pitching complete games. What happened in the 80s, 90s, and 2000? Yeah, something in my throat. I'll get into it in my next video. Complete games. That will be my next category. Top 5 pitcher lists. Thanks for watching here. I'm out.